Chappell Roan isn't your friend. Taylor Swift isn't secretly gay. Kieran Culkin doesn't hate his wife. The Smosh cast aren't dolls you can play with. And yet, some of y'all seem to get off on taking these real people and contorting them into your idea of who they are, and then getting angry at them for not living up to it. So here we are again. If you're keeping count, this is my 6th video on this topic, and somehow the message still hasn't gotten through to the right people, so you're all officially in the naughty corner. The fandomification of real people continues to go too far, and we really need to put a stop to it. It's gonna take all of us, but I think we can do it. Let's start with the obvious. Chappell Roan. Over the last year, Chappell has started about 100 conversations about the nature of fame and celebrity, most of them entirely out of her own control, either by standing up for herself, standing up for others, or just existing in a way that makes other people uncomfortable. She's dealt with an almost unprecedented level of vitriol, considering that her main job is to get on stage and sing to the masses. It started off coming from the obvious corner of the internet. Right-wing freaks who think that as a queer person she shouldn't be so visible, and as a woman she shouldn't be so outspoken. You've all heard the refrain of, "She's not fit for show business," because she called out a reporter who was rude to her first, instead of just lying down and taking it. If you want more information on why that specifically is bad, check out my 4-hour epic on invisible labor, because I worked very hard on it and it's very good. Chappell has dealt with stalkers, online hate campaigns, and even infighting from her own community just by being herself and standing up for what she believes in. Fans found out her flight information and showed up at the airport. People have grabbed and kissed her without her consent. And she's had her family members' numbers leaked online. As pointed out in the Rolling Stones interview with her, her sudden fame was, and still is, incredibly jarring to her. Still, Roan never anticipated it would get this big. Normal, as she once knew it, no longer exists. As a working artist, she was happy to just see the shows grow. Now she's facing mounting pressure to not only live up to the person her fans want her to be, but to also figure out if and how she wants to keep things running at such a massive level. Part of me hopes I never have a hit again, because then no one will ever expect anything from me again, she says quietly. The more everyone knows who she is, the less she feels connected to who she used to be. "My brain is so scattered and I just don't feel like myself," she says, a sentiment she keeps repeating. And the scariest part of her treatment by the wider public is how absolutely normalized it is. Charli XCX, Billie Eilish, Hayley Williams, Katy Perry, Lorde, Miley Cyrus, every member of Boy Genius, Lady Gaga, the band Muna, Sabrina Carpenter, and Mitski have all reached out to her to commiserate and give her tips on how to survive with her mental health intact. An email she received from Mitski stated, "I just wanted to humbly welcome you to the shittiest exclusive club in the world, the club where strangers think you belong to them and they find and harass your family members. And in case you hadn't already noticed, these are all women. Because women get the distinctly sharper end of the stick when it comes to boundary-crossing fan behavior. I'm not saying there aren't terrifying fans of male artists, there obviously are. And if you've been in any way a part of K-pop fandom circles, you know that intimately. But the exceeding normalization of violent and abusive behavior towards female celebrities, and just women in general, is getting genuinely scary." Chappell mentioned in the interview that some men reached out offering a shoulder, such as Elton John, Troye Sivan, Noah Khan, and Orville Peck, but that they're the exception rather than the rule. Not a lot of boys have been like, "Let me know if you ever want to talk about it." She gets piled on for defending herself against stalkers and being vocal about her wants and needs, and she gets piled on for being more compassionate to those who don't share her views than people who are fans of hers want to be. I am, of course, referring to the time she said she had Republican relatives who she loves, and people seemed to take that as a tacit endorpiment of their views rather than what it actually is, which is a statement about how family and relationships are complicated. If you can point to a single relative of yours that has slightly differing views to you on things that you don't sit with at Christmas, I'll eat my hat. My relatives aren't anywhere near as leftist, anarchist, or commie as I am, but does that mean I'm supposed to disown them? Not show up for Christmas? You do know that if we cut out everybody who doesn't exactly align with us, we're doing exactly what those MAGA assholes are doing, right? And just in case you want to take my words out of context and you hate waffles me, just like y'all did with Chappell, I'm not saying that it's every leftist or queer person or person of color's duty to reach out across the aisle and do all the work for a group of people who wouldn't pour water on us if we were on fire. All I'm saying is that a little bit of compassion goes a long way. Chappell being emotionally available to those conservative relatives has probably done more to change their views for the better than any reactive behavior would have done. And again, none of that is her responsibility. How she chooses to show up for her Republican relatives might be completely different to how you would do it. But in actuality, it doesn't matter because they're not your relatives. You don't know her or them, and therefore your opinion is null and fucking void. Sorry. Do I wish I could get my elderly relatives to care about Palestine? Yes, obviously. Have I tried? Yes. But there's only so much I can do before I'll be the one getting pushed out of those conversations. The best I can do is find a place where we can find common ground and keep pushing forward that way. My elderly relatives are much more tolerant of LGBTQ+ issues than I ever expected them to be, and that's down to my part in the queer community and the fact that it's much harder to hate the nebulous idea of the trans menace when there are trans masc and non-binary people in your kitchen. My grandma understands the concept of asexuality, which is more than I can say for the entirety of the US political system. My uncle and I frequently get into good-natured political debates, and I genuinely believed I've changed his thinking for the better. Plus, having to construct arguments about my beliefs while also balancing that with the fact that this isn't a stranger and I want this person to like me when I'm finished has made me infinitely better at having constructive conversations. Take that, liberals!
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Shouting at Chappell Roan because you're angry at her for not going to the White House, or for not saying enough about Palestine, or for saying too much about politics, or whatever else people are angry at her for in any given moment, isn't going to change her mind. And you'll know that because none of you are actually shouting thinking she's going to listen. You shout at her because she's a vessel you can throw all your rage and impotence towards without worrying about the consequences. She's too famous to notice, so if she does read your comment and get upset, you can just roll your eyes at her and tell her it comes with the territory and that she just needs to grow a thicker skin and get over it. Never mind that if you woke up tomorrow with thousands upon thousands of people taking something you said out of context as an excuse to scream abuse at you, you probably wouldn't handle it very well because you're not trying to be famous, right? But by that point, you'd be famous. You can't get unfamous. So what happens then? Do you run away to the woods for 10 years and hope that by the time you emerge, people will have forgotten all about it? I mean, you put that thought out into the world, you had to expect somebody to see it, right? It's actually selfish and immature of you to be so upset to be perceived when you clearly wanted the attention, or you wouldn't have posted anything at all. Right? Chappell Roan is the easy vehicle to talk about this because it's been so clear over the last year, but this happens every other day with TikTok and Twitter's People of the Week. People who, maybe wanted to create an audience of some kind, but don't expect anywhere near the volume of audience they suddenly acquire through an accident of luck and timing, and now have to learn how to deal with that while being perceived. People think she has no right to complain because she wanted this, but that's a completely backwards take. Peach PRC is an amazing musician, and she's funny as fuck, but since blowing up on TikTok, she's had a number of mini viral moments for being bad at performing, to the point where, for a while there, she would get online right after a filmed performance went live just to apologize for its quality, regardless of how good it actually was. A lot of this is because Peach got famous online, and then was immediately performing to huge audiences, not just online, but in person. She wanted more ears on her music, but that doesn't mean she knew what to expect once she blew up. A lot of musicians grind for years before they even receive a drop of virality, a la Chappell Roan, and as pointed out, even with all that preparation and lead-in, she still couldn't cope when she blew up beyond her wildest dreams. That's not something the human brain is built to comprehend. Peach has been performing all her life, but she hadn't had the practice of performing to gradually growing audiences that most musicians pre-TikTok and social media got, where you have to sort of slowly elevate your way to fame, and the big fame was something that happened to 1 in a million people. Which means any failure she had was blasted to millions and right there to be picked apart from every angle. I love singing and performing. I've been doing it my entire life. But it's been a few years since I was performing semi-regularly on stage, and if tomorrow I posted a song and it blew up, and then I was expected to do it live on talk shows or to massive audiences, I'd probably flub it a few times too. People aren't perfect, and Peach is the first person to say that about herself.
I have been very open about the fact that I was a fucking piece of shit in high school, and I wasn't like popular mean girl where I was like looking down on people. I was a little fucking rat that nobody liked, and I also was getting my shit rocked at home. So I was coming to school being a fucking asshole to people, and I'm not proud of it, and it doesn't excuse that behavior, but I've been very open about the fact that I was not a nice kid, and that's why in my adult life I really place a lot of value on being a good person and being a nice person, because that is something that I care a lot about.
But because she's honest about it when she feels she hasn't performed well, it's like it it gave people license to be meaner and pickier until she was apologizing for every filmed performance, even when it was totally fine, or even good, because she knew it was only a matter of time before people started dissecting it, and it's easier to get ahead of it than be blindsided by it. But I'm sure this had a horrific effect on her mental health.
Lol, the first live performance she ever did, she was a complete disaster. I'll always remember her crying in bed over it and uploading it to social media. Yeah, it was a total disaster because it was my first live performance. Like, do you want me to come out the bat fucking swinging, just come out on stage being like, pop star ready, let's go? Obviously it was a fucking disaster. I've never even sang in a pub before. I've never sang in a bar. Like, I've never busked before. The only singing I'd ever done was online, and people had flown into state to see me for my first ever live show. Like, I got thrown in the deep end with that, so of course it fucking sucked. And I cried about it. And I didn't cry because it was bad. I cried because I felt like I'd let people down, people that had flown from interstate to come see me perform, and it was bad. And I felt horrible that they had that experience.
I've only had a tiny taste of the kind of fame those people received, and I still question every decision I make now in a way I wouldn't have 2 years ago. I only have 28,000 subscribers, and I love every single one of you like and subscribe, but I feel obligated to you all in some way. Half of you probably clicked the subscribe button once and have never watched a single one of my videos again, which makes sense when you look at my subscribers versus my views metrics, good God. But I still feel tied to your perception of me. For some of you, I'm the asexual content creator, so the lack of ace rep on the channel has felt frustrating in the last year. For some of you, you only subscribed because of the psych video, and don't understand why the rest of my content is queer leftist commie video essays. For some of you, you only subscribed because you liked my politics and don't understand when I pivot to venting about a rom-com I hate or talking about acting. And that's confusing and frustrating for me. I don't want to make multiple channels to funnel all my topics into so that everything is segregated and viewers only see the content they expect. I like being unexpected. I have ADHD. Even I don't know what my next video topic will be sometimes. I don't want to segregate and categorize parts of me just to appease to a faceless audience, even if that faceless audience are the reason I can make a career out of this. If you subscribe to this channel, you subscribed for me, not just my content. And I have to believe that my authenticity is enough for at least some of you to stick around, even when I'm saying things you disagree with. Unfortunately, putting myself and my opinions out onto the internet means that no matter what, I will come up against people who make assumptions about me or completely misunderstand something I've said and then use that as a reason to hate me. And I've made my peace with that. That doesn't mean that those people are right for doing that. It just means that I know I won't be able to stop it all on my own. And it's easier to let it roll off me than pick a fight with every person who misrepresents me in my comments section or elsewhere online. Even when sometimes I really want to, because sometimes people get it so wrong that it drives me up the wall. In some weird way, I think Chappell, Roan and I could be friends, and I'm sure a lot of the rest of you do too. That's part of the appeal of celebrity in the first place. It's creating these personas that people either relate to or strive to be like, holding them up just over the masses and then giving just enough personality and authenticity that people can get attached to them. It's a cynical view of the world, but it's true. Peach PRC is amazing, and I love her. And Peach, if you're watching and you want a friend, hit me up in the DMs. I am so serious. Yes, I've just talked about parasociality and how nobody actually knows these people, and I agree with everything I've said and my upcoming points. But also, being a YouTuber is an explicitly isolated career, and it would be nice to have more friends who know what it's like. That's part of the reason I think I'd be friends with Chappell, by the way. That, and we're a bunch of queers. And I know you get that, because I bet some of y'all have had the same thought while watching my videos. You don't know me, but I'm sure a lot of you think we'd make good friends too. And I'm sure some of you aren't even wrong. Maybe if we met at a concert and started talking, or you were on my university courses, we'd be great friends. But some of you are dead wrong, because that's how this works. Some of you don't like me. You just like the version of me you've created from seeing the carefully curated person you've been watching. I'm funny. That is true. I'm intelligent, I'm queer, I'm a leftist, I'm extremely hot. All of these things are true. But I'm not this witty all the time. I have a chronic illness, which I've spoken about numerous times on this channel, but what you don't see is how bad of a friend that illness has made me. I love my friends more than anything in the world. They are the reason I get up every day. But as of writing this, I have 40 unread messages from my 2 closest friends in the world. And I haven't really spoken to one of my other closest friends in months. This isn't for lack of them trying, by the way. My delicious cocktail of ADHD, probable autism, CPTSD, chronic illness, and probably just my innate personality makes it incredibly difficult for me to respond to messages in a timely manner. And I am so lucky, so very, very lucky that the people I love most not only know this about me, but tolerate it. So many people would take it personally or just find it off-putting and stop putting in the effort, and I totally get that. Even my YouTuber friends, I can only barely call friends because I'm often too anxious to reach out in case I'm bothering them, until the only times I reach out become the times when I'm discussing possible collabs or quote reads. And then I feel like I have no right to call them my friends because all this is a business relationship, and whose fault is that? Huge shout out to Batman Ultra 7 in that regard for not only messaging me semi-regularly, but not getting mad at me when it takes me 5 to 7 business days to respond to literally just a meme he thought I'd laugh at. As a side note, everybody go subscribe to him. He makes great videos, and he's criminally underrated. Also, go buy his comic book. Where was I? Oh, yeah, I suck. Well, I do. I'm abrasive, I'm opinionated, I have a tendency to shut down big emotions in a way that makes the people around me think I'm pointedly being rude instead of trying to avoid blowing up at them. And then I don't understand why those people aren't grateful to me for shutting down instead of picking a fight, even though from their perspective, I'm giving them the cold shoulder and I've just stopped emoting at all. None of those things make me great to be around, and I know that. I got lucky. I found people who either understand those parts of me or are able to put up with them despite their lack of understanding. I don't want those people to ever think I'm taking them for granted because I'm always baffled and so incredibly chuffed that such cool, amazing people want to talk to me. I feel similarly about this audience. I don't ever want to take this for granted. The fact that the only reason I can afford to live is the people who like my words enough to subscribe and comment, and in some cases, give me their literal hard-earned money. Patreon and Coffee linked below. But even with all of that gratitude, I won't change myself for that audience. I'll try to change for the sake of those in my life who have to deal with me every day. But for this faceless mass of people, some of whom don't even have the decency to finish the video before they tell me it's bad, or that I'm fat or ugly or stupid, I can't and won't morph myself into what you specifically want. Largely because you don't all want the same thing from me. Like I said, you'll have individual ideas of what I'm like based on what you've seen of me, and some of you think I'm too much of an ugly, nasty, cunny bitch, and some of you might think I'm not leftist enough, and there's no way of bridging the divide between those two opinions without compromising my self-identity in some way. There's another quote from that Rolling Stones article that I think is interesting in this regard, because Chappell said, "They need to see me as a random bitch on the street. You can't yell at a random bitch who's on the sidewalk that you don't know. It's considered catcalling or harassment." And she's right, that is harassment. But she's also wrong, because unfortunately, yelling out at a random bitch on the sidewalk has become more and more normalized over the last 10 years. Partly due to the proliferation of TikTok and Twitter and the attitudes some people have towards filming in public or putting people on blast. Making anonymous strangers famous is justified, but only if you can monetize it or you personally don't like them. Personally, I only agree with public shaming when they're so evil that we collectively agree they deserve to be stripped of their anonymity. Haya Reichek of Libs of TikTok fame being a great example. She created her platform by harassing normal people who didn't want fame and only ever seemed to be doing good things like supporting queer kids, and then expected to maintain her own anonymity? Fat chance. Evil bitch. But she was deeply upset when her own tactics got turned on her for some reason. As She's Gonna Change the World on Tumblr pointed out, people want to treat their own bad behavior as if it was as inevitable as the weather. And then when the people they're assholes to are like, actually fuck you, and stand up for themselves, they get all pearl clutchy about how they have a right to express themselves and how other people just can't handle the truth. Toddlers. They're right. That's full-on toddler behavior, y'all. It's genuinely concerning. This culture we've created, where people aren't just maintaining parasocial relationships, but living in an actual delusion and lashing out at anybody who doesn't support said delusion, is really starting to be a problem. I'm talking, of course, about the Swifties. This is like the third time I've called Swifties out on my channel. I think I got a death wish or something. To be honest, I could make this point just as easily with the BTS army, and really it was a toss-up as to which bear I poked was gonna kill me faster, and I decided Swifties were a slightly safer bet. Slightly. And I will say before I start this, I like some of her music. But y'all are taking this cult of personality thing way too far for somebody who does not have enough personality to sustain it. Some of her songs are good, but please, listen to other music. Branch out. Anything. I'm literally begging.
Come on, really?
Yeah.
Does it have to be? Do we have to do this? Like,
No.
I want to like Taylor. I like some songs. I want to like Taylor Swift. You guys make it so goddamn difficult.
You just have to be so stubborn and not listen to other music.
Yeah.
Because if you did, there's 10-minute songs out there that are worth it, man. Don't make this the one. Be like, it's 10 minutes because it's fucking awesome. It's like, no, it's not. There's not one solo.
That's what I'm saying. You have to actively avoid listening to other music and thinking about if it's better to like Taylor Swift this much.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying she doesn't have some great songs. She does. But it's so much. And it's so not that impressive.
Yeah.
There's other stuff going on and there's other music. And I promise you, you won't lose your personality. You can wear the Tortured Poets Department shirt and still listen to other music. You're allowed to do it. Your whole personality doesn't have to be Taylor Swift is the best of all time and she's mother. And everybody else who makes pop music sucks cocks and is the worst and fuck them.
Listen to some Doom, man.
Yeah, sorry. Got worked up.
Being a fan of someone isn't new. People put up posters of famous people from basically the time posters were a thing. Making the person or thing your entire personality isn't new either. Celebrity worship has existed for as long as celebrity has, whether in the living rooms of houses or on message boards in the early age of the internet, or now, where being behind on which celebrity to follow feels like a social death sentence. But some of y'all need to take a step back and evaluate your behavior, because good God, I'm not just talking about the galas, largely because I already made a whole video about them, which you should also watch. I'm also talking about those ride or die Swifties who just think she can do no wrong. I hate to say it, but Taylor Swift is not, nor will she ever be, as good of a person as you want her to be. Neither will I, or Chappell, Roan, or any of the other people I'm gonna talk about in this video, but Taylor is a special case because we can see the ways she's not a good person. And some of her fans will do anything to pretend they can't. She flies her private jet everywhere, which means she's personally contributing to climate change. And you can say, no one person is responsible for climate change all you want, but when we can measure your personal effect on the environment, that statement goes out the fucking window. Her boyfriend recently said on national television that he was happy Trump came to the Super Bowl, and you can argue that he was being diplomatic, but when you consider that at the same Super Bowl, Kendrick made a point of calling out not just Drake, but also Trump, that's a pretty bad justification. There are diplomatic ways to say you're not happy about somebody being there, and there are diplomatic ways of avoiding the topic altogether. A simple, today isn't about the politics, I want to acknowledge the lifelong Chiefs fans across political lines who've shown up to support us today, would have done twice the work and none of the damage. And you can argue that her boyfriend's views aren't her responsibility, and you'd be right. But you're seriously going to tell me that doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth? When she dated Matty Healy and all his shitty behavior got outed, people were more angry at him for tainting Taylor's image than they were at Taylor for dating a well-known polarizing guy. Seriously, most of those clips of him saying or doing controversial things were from his tours or interviews. He wasn't exactly hiding it. But of course, Taylor couldn't have known, because that means she was complicit, and you can't paint her as a victim of circumstance if she's complicit. And yeah, you can't blame her for either of those two men's behavior, but she's made obvious choices about where her allegiances lie. Honestly, her being a billionaire is enough for me to write her off completely. I feel the same way about Rihanna. Once you reach billionairedom, you've become something other than human. And I don't care how much you like someone's music, you can't just pretend that's not happening. There is no such thing as an ethical billionaire. I'm gonna repeat it again, in case y'all didn't hear me. There is no such thing as an ethical billionaire. Millionaires, sure. Even multi-millionaires, but not billionaires. Billionaires are only created through the exploitation of labor. Whether or not that's committed by that individual personally or by the companies they have shares in is irrelevant. You can't, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, your way out of this one. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism is there for the rest of us. If you like Taylor Swift's music or Rihanna's, despite their status, that's okay. That's what that phrase is for. If you go to bat for her as if she doesn't make 100% of her decisions herself, then you're not just naive, you're wrong. Taylor Swift has built her career on being largely apolitical, and it's a big reason why she's as big as she is now. But she manages to keep hold of this image she has as being on the right side of history by occasionally throwing her hat into the ring, but only when it's going to have almost no blowback. People like Chappell, Roan, and Macklemore have spent the last year being vocally supportive of Palestine despite the mainstream media's clear and present bias towards Israel, and they've done this at the expense of people who might have been in their audience, because they cared more about standing up for what was right. And they both have a lot more to lose than Taylor Swift does. Taylor Swift could post, "Fuck Donald Trump and everything he stands for, I hope he dies," tomorrow, and she'd get some blowback, but, and this is important,
but I've gotten to the point, you should know this too.
she'd still be a billionaire. Her career could end tomorrow and she could never work again, and it wouldn't matter because she will always have a roof over her head and food on the table. But she won't risk it. She'll continue to make milquetoast, middle-of-the-road political statements that lean just left enough to avoid outrage from her fans, and she'll keep raking in the dollars. Fandomifying Chappell Roan by creating an idea of her that she has to live up to is dangerous for her. But fandomifying Taylor Swift in the same way becomes dangerous for you. Because once you're deep enough in that version of reality, you'll do anything not to see it shattered. Up to and including going to bat for a billionaire who will never know you exist. Stop expecting celebrities, and especially brands, to live up to the version of them that has been created, either by them or by their fans, because if you do, you will either always be disappointed, or you'll start to compromise your own expectations in order to justify liking them. You are allowed to like the creations of problematic people. And you're even allowed to like the problematic people themselves, but you have to be honest with yourself when you do. Refusing to hold her to account because that's easier than trying to square away her views and your politics, or worse, compromising your morals to avoid admitting that the image she's created isn't the same underneath, is genuinely bad for you. But on the opposite side of the coin, constantly raising the bar on somebody because they have shown themselves to agree with your politics, and then being vocally disappointed when they don't reach the heights you've grown to expect from them, is also bad for your psyche.
And that's all going to be in there, and that's good flavor. You let me know if that's your liking or not. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do anything about it, but it was cool hanging.
Dropout TV is a streaming service created from the ashes of college humor, responsible for shows like Game Changer, Make Some Noise, and the ever-popular D&D series Dimension 20, and all of its offshoots. It's also one of the few companies on the internet that presents itself extremely straightforwardly as a progressive company, even when the rest of the corporate world seems to be running and hiding from woke labels because they live under a fascist state and they're too scared to speak up. Do you see that Target's losing money since they started kicking DI to the curb? Funny that. But in the last month or so, there's been an extremely aggressive push from some of their audience to feature more trans femme people on the streamer. And in a vacuum, I completely understand these people's frustration at seemingly being ignored by the company. While there are a number of non-binary and trans masc creators who feature on various Dropout shows, most famously Ali Beardsley and Vic Michaelis, there are a lot less regularly featured trans women. I understand the pain of not feeling represented by a company that claims to stand up for your values and your community. It feels hurtful and dismissive. However, the vitriol that I've seen in every post about this situation is, not fucking helping. Your anger is valid. Your expression of that anger, however, is up to interpretation by anybody who comes across it. Spitting venom or even outright accusing the company of ignoring trans women is a little intense if you actually want the company to listen to your insights on the issue. Dropout has done more to platform trans creators than pretty much every other entertainment company in America, but they can always do more. And in the eyes of some followers, they have to do more. They are obligated to do more, because if they don't, they're ignoring the issue. They're stepping on trans women. They're just as bad as everyone else, which is just not true. I'm not here to shill for a company, but guys, come on. Dropout might be progressive and full of queers and leftists, but they're still a company with profit margins and payroll and video metrics. The best way to get them to platform more trans femme creators is to support them when they do feature. Share the videos those women feature on. Show an excess of support for that content. Praise them for their more progressive videos or creations. They're clearly trying to move forward with a progressive vision, but it won't happen overnight. And getting angry at them for not already having caught up to what your expectations of them are isn't going to make that progress faster. And actually, to add to this point, even if you complain and they decide tomorrow they're going to create more things with trans women in, right? Even if you do that now, we're not going to see the fruit of that labor for another few months, if not a year. So you could keep complaining for that entire time while not realizing that they're actually already trying to implement the changes you asked for. Don't lump them in with Netflix or one of those other shitty streamers that literally only looks at the numbers and refuses to engage with their audience on any level. Dropout have already repeatedly expressed their commitment to progressivism, both in their continued hiring of marginalized identities and in their willingness to respond to criticism in good faith. A lot of people are only using the kind of language they're using because they don't actually think anybody from Dropout is going to read it. They're shouting into the void while tagging the company and the creators and the talent because it's cathartic to throw that anger at something tangible. And it's easier to do with Dropout because it's a company, so you can depersonalize it even more than we do with individual celebrities. But how do you think any of those individual people who work on Dropout will feel when they see those posts? Do you think they'll read the long passages where you call them a bigot for not platforming enough trans women and decide to hold a revolution in the Dropout offices and replace all the regular cast with trans women? Or is it more likely that they'll be upset at the tone and become frustrated because no matter how progressive the platform is, it'll never be enough for some people? And again, I'm not saying that your anger isn't valid or that they shouldn't platform more trans people. Before you "so you hate waffles" me, I'm not saying that wanting more from a company you support is a bad thing. It obviously isn't. If I had my way, Persephone would be on every single thing Dropout creates, and I stand by that.
I think that this question is going to be answered by who can swallow a foot long.
Guy Rumba.
So, Grant.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Grant.
In
It's
the
for sure,
interest of honesty, I also can, but I did not work at a hot dog stand.
I mean, I guess we have to have a swallowing contest.
Oh my God, bring the hot dog out, please.
I want the same thing you do, especially now in a post-election world where it's going to become harder and harder for trans people, and especially trans women, to live safely or get gainful employment. I also want more trans people to feature on Dropout and Netflix and to get to the fucking Oscars so that the one trans woman to go to the Oscars isn't a racist piece of shit. But this pedestal we've placed on certain people and organizations to be better has led to some people expecting them to be the best and then being angry at them when they're not.
We all say things like, I'm being so normal about this, and I would like to point out that outside of the fun, jokey context, framing any emotional response as normal or abnormal is going to lead to an unhealthy relationship with yourself. But sometimes we all need to take a step back and rather than ask ourselves if we're being normal about something, really evaluate whether our response is disproportional. That's the real crux of this issue. Is your response to a character death disproportional to the context that death occurs in? Have you taken that emotion to its logical conclusion, or are you seeking out reasons to rationalize away any irrationalities in your response? Are you going to drop the show because it's negatively affected your mental health, or are you going to start anonymously DMing everyone involved in the show as a spiteful hate campaign to seek revenge for those feelings? Are you actually advocating for better representation, or are you just looking for an easy target to vent those feelings of frustration upon? It's very easy to fall down the rabbit hole of overreaction. I've done it, and I'm sure you've done it too. But what we have to be mindful of is turning into reactionaries, because that approach to media criticism and to life doesn't serve anybody, least of all ourselves.
Half the time we place people on pedestals, it's so that in the future, when they fuck up, they have a high place to fall from, and then we can enjoy their fall just as much as we enjoyed the heights. But aren't you all tired of this? If Chappell Roan turns out to be a terrible person, I won't be excited to see her downfall. I'll just be sad and tired. If Dropout is secretly revealed to be refusing trans women employment, I won't celebrate their demise. I'll be devastated that one of the few companies left that I actually put my trust in wasn't worth my energy. And neither of those things have happened. Touch wood, and I hope to God neither of them ever do. But the lengths people will go to fandomify real people in order to justify not treating them like real people is becoming truly frightening. Cancel culture doesn't work, and we all know that by now, but people who use it as a smokescreen to harass people are still out there.
ITBOY BBNO $sign. I am HRM, the Gen Z Eminem.
Baby No Money, or BBNOS, has recently got into some hot water for queerbaiting, and considering this series was literally created in response to people wrongly misusing that term in order to bully Kit Connor into coming out, I feel personally obligated to talk about it. He's not queerbaiting. Hope this helps. Annyeong. For starters, he's not making fun of being gay, nor is he claiming to be queer. So condemning him on either front is weird. At the moment, he's just cosplaying and kissing boys. And isn't that how most of us started figuring our own identities out?
Push him. Yeah, bend your neck more. You guys don't have to be close. You guys.
No,
can
we want to
separate.
be. We want to be.
We want to be close.
Okay, fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Also, if he's 100% straight and only doing this because it's fun, that's actually great for us. A famous white straight guy doing cosplay drag and kissing the homies and not being weird or toxic about that is actually what the world needs right now. And to be extremely clear, before we go any further, real people cannot queerbait. We keep forgetting that because we've fandomified these people so much that they don't feel real to us anymore. They're not a person, they're just a brand or an image. But whether he's doing it for a bit, doing it to explore his own sexuality, or doing it because a viral moment will get more eyes on his music, that's still not queerbaiting. It might be callous if he's only doing it for marketing reasons, and it would be pretty shitty of him, but it's not queerbaiting. Queerbaiting has a very specific definition. Use it properly. His actual sexuality is not your business, and he could be the biggest flaming homo in the world, and it still wouldn't matter whether he was kissing boys for cosplay photo shoots or not. If you like the things he's making, great. If you don't, fine. But why do you feel the need to ascribe an identity to him based on your perception of those videos? And then get angry at him when he doesn't immediately confirm that perception? Are y'all not exhausted? Did you not get tired of doing this with the last 10 celebrities you did it to? Actually, speaking of, let's also leave Billie Eilish alone while we're at it. I didn't really talk about this at the time, although I did mean to, but as a society, we keep failing Billie Eilish, and it's gotta stop. Like, she's famous and wealthy enough now that it doesn't matter as much as it used to, but there were a few years there where y'all did everything you could to tear that girl down. She hid her body explicitly to avoid people being weird and commenting on it and sexualizing her when she was still a teenager. And then when people realized what she looked like under her baggy clothes, they were weird and made sexualizing comments about her when she was still a teenager. Then, when she was an adult and wanted to take control of that narrative and started showing her body more, people called her a slut for getting her cleavage out. And actually, I want to sidebar about that for a second, because it's been on my mind for years and I need to get it out. I can't speak for Billie, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to speak to this as it pertains to my own experience and the experience of other women I know in order to provide context for why that particular controversy was and remains so stupid. Firstly, she explained everything about why she did those photos in the article that the photos were released in. So if literally any journalist at the Daily Mail would take several seats and just read the thing, that would save all of us a lot of time. But as we all know, people working for the Daily Mail can't read. They're incapable. It's actually a prerequisite for working there. I'm pretty sure they hire most of their journalists by just scraping Twitter for the "you hate waffles" people. Secondly, I'm not here to talk about the takes that are like, oh my god, she's so brave. Because as she mentioned, that's really fucking condescending. As someone who has always been a chubby person, it's incredibly disheartening to hear someone tell me I'm brave for wearing a crop top like it's a feat akin to scaling a building freehand. It's not brave, I'm just literally showing you my stomach. Calling me brave in that moment isn't to make me feel better, it's to pat yourselves on the back for not screaming in horror at my fat rolls. Like, you're so brave and I'm so chill for accepting that bravery. Fuck off. Likewise to the takes that are like, it's scandalo, woman dresses sexy, how dare she, the fabric of society is torn asunder. Because as I mentioned, those people can't read. If you saw Sabrina Carpenter pretend to do a sex position for comedy on stage and rush to Twitter to cry about it, you're in the same camp, by the way. No, I'm doing this specifically to talk about the people, weirdly mostly women, who are saying that this doesn't count as empowerment because sexualizing yourself after men have tried to sexualize you isn't empowering. And before I even start, I would like to be clear that my take on this is that the people that are saying that, with the utmost respect, are dead fucking wrong. The reason why women find being sexualized uncomfortable is because we're being sexualized in situations where nothing sexual is happening, or in situations where we're too young to be sexualized, or in situations where it is generally inappropriate to sexualize us. If I wear a crop top while walking to buy milk, that is not an invitation to holler at me from across the street. Likewise, if Billie Eilish is a literal child and feels so uncomfortable having her body perceived by the public that she feels the need to cover herself in layers of clothing, that's a fucking problem. as are all the countdown to 18 timers that men have put on teenage female celebrities for years. That shit's disgusting, you're all nonces, and I hope you never have daughters. Or sons. Actually, just forego children entirely, you'd be terrible parents. So if you don't think about it for more than 5 seconds, saying sexualizing yourself after men have been sexualizing you isn't empowerment, it's playing into misogyny, might make sense. The problem comes when you think about the fact that sexualizing yourself isn't for men, or at least it has literally never been for me. I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, but I remember once when I was about 15, me and my friend were going to go to the shops. Nothing fancy, just buying food for movie night or something. And before we left, we decided to put makeup on. I love painting my eyelids rainbow colors, as you can probably tell from my entire body of work. And this was in the early days of that, where I was just finding out I even liked makeup. Now, I'm not gonna get into the internal misogyny of wearing makeup because that's not what this video is about, but I've never been interested in so-called natural makeup anyway. I want rainbow eyelids, damn it! I'm essentially a drag queen. Chappell. We started heading to the car, and my dad, who was sitting in the living room, looked up, saw my face, and said, "Who's that for?" And I was like, "Huh?" And he said, "What have you put that stuff on your face for?" And I said, "Because I like it." And he said, "That's not the whole story though, is it? You put it on so that someone will notice it and tell you it looks nice." And I said, "I mean, I think it looks nice." And he told me to stop lying to him and just admit the truth. And I was so confused because, and I mean this, that had literally not even occurred to me. I put the glitter on because I liked the way it looked on my face, and other people's opinions didn't matter to me, except for maybe the friend who I was going out with. But my dad assumed I'd put makeup on because I was sneaking out to go meet a boy and was trying to confront me about it. And for the very first time in my life, I realized that if I did something even remotely attached to making myself look prettier, even just paint a purple ombre onto my eyelids, men would assume it was for them. Even my own father assumed I was painting my face for some guy because I couldn't possibly just be doing it for myself. But as an ace person, I don't want to be sexualized. By anyone, really. But especially in that creepy male gazy way that every woman knows how to identify. That doesn't mean I don't want to dress sexy sometimes. It just means, you know, fuck off. As a bi person, I'm attracted to every gender, but I don't need to sexualize anyone to do that. I experience aesthetic attraction and romantic attraction, but not sexual. Which is why I find it so hard to wrap my brain around these women saying that sexualizing yourself is misogyny of some kind. Because yeah, I'm ace, but I also like to dress like a slut on Halloween. I dance like a whore any chance I can get. And almost every shirt I own is low cut. I don't do any of that for men. I dress that way because it makes me feel good. I dance that way because it's fun. Because I like the way I look. I spent 40 minutes one Halloween just taking pictures of myself in the mirror before I left to meet my friends. And those photos weren't taken to be posted anywhere. They exist because I liked looking at me. I looked hot as fuck. But because I dressed in a skin-tight outfit and boots, I must have been playing into misogynies, right, ladies? I'm just doing what the men always wanted. I'm laying myself out on the banquet table like a stuffed pig after I've spent years telling people they should be vegetarian. Except no, fuck you, that's not what's happening at all. Just like that's not what happened with Billie. If anything, the thought of being perceived by men while looking that way actually makes me less likely to do it. Because I've been in enough uncomfortable situations over the years. That Halloween where I loved how hot I was the same Halloween where I got uncomfortably hit on in the club by somebody I had previously only seen as a friend, and he was very irritated when I didn't reciprocate his interest. We didn't stay friends after that. It sucked. At the time of that Vogue photo shoot, Billie Eilish was 19 years old. She didn't get pressured into doing a sexual photo shoot the second she turned 18. She decided to do a 50s style boudoir photo shoot when she was 19, after releasing a song about how men will take advantage regardless of what you do, and then gave a pretty comprehensive interview about why she feels comfortable doing that at that point as opposed to a year previously. And before you get in the comments, like, you wouldn't be saying this if, I would like to preface that my sister is the same age as Billie Eilish, and if they called me tomorrow and said they'd done this photo shoot, I would say all of this again. If it was my sister or my friends on the cover of Vogue in a corset, I'd be cheering from the rooftops that they felt comfortable enough in themselves and their bodies to do that. For a very long time, I felt uncomfortable dressing in any way that accentuates my curves, because it also tends to accentuate my chubby features too, like crop tops or tight leggings or skin-tight dresses. I've tried to push through those feelings over the last few years, but I still struggle with it most days. Especially in this last year when I gained weight very rapidly due to the medication I was on, and I had to relearn how to like the way I looked whenever I saw myself in the mirror. Those outfits either lend me towards unwanted sexualization or ridicule for not being sexy enough, when all I want to do is wear a slutty dress to dance in for my own enjoyment. So when Billie Eilish gets on the cover of Vogue in a corset and talks about loving her figure despite the creepy sexualization of it by men, I get that, and I don't understand anyone who doesn't. Her not being a doll you can position for your own amusement, or a meek girl who hides her figure just in case somebody is attracted to it, isn't a failure in feminism. It's the opposite. And in the same vein, her being openly queer now doesn't give you license to treat her like a predator. People speculated about her sexuality for years before she confirmed herself as queer, and it was shitty and gross the entire time. She'd post an Instagram photo of her and her friends with the caption, "I love girls," and people would cry queerbaiting and lambast her for it. People wanted her to be queer, so every moment where she wasn't confirming or denying it felt like a betrayal, instead of like a girl in her early 20s navigating her own sexuality. Just because she's got an audience doesn't mean she knows who she is. I knew I was queer when I was a teenager, but only because people reacted with confusion when I offhandedly said we all know women are attractive. As if that was a statement they could all agree with. Up until that point, I hadn't considered my attraction abnormal. I wasn't out until I was about 15, which is early for a lot of people, late for others. I didn't realize I was asexual until I was 20 years old. Some people don't know their right label until their 30s, 40s, 50s. Hell, I've met people who didn't know until their 70s. Some people live half their lives operating under one label and then are too scared to admit it's the wrong one, because society has boxed them in, and stepping out of that box might mean uprooting everything. Everybody's journey is personal, and everybody's journey is different. But it must be 100 times harder when that journey is being scrutinized by millions of eyes. And even now that she's come out, people will claim her as representative of their identity without taking her lived experiences into account. She hasn't said she's a lesbian or bisexual or pan or anything in between. She just said that she's queer and she's attracted to women. But there are people out there who have decided that that means that she's a lesbian and will be absolutely horrid to anybody who says otherwise. The same goes for people who keep insisting Chappell Roan is bisexual even after she changed her label to lesbian. I have personal beef with certain subsets of internet lesbians because they take the experiences that are suffered by sapphic women across the sexuality spectrum and claim them as exclusively lesbian experiences, and then are allowed to be angry when you point out that they don't have the monopoly on being discriminated against. These are the galas and gold star lesbians of the world, and we need to stop paying them any mind. They don't represent the wider lesbian community. But neither does Billie Eilish. Even if she is a lesbian, which she has not said, you shouldn't hold her up as a figurehead of lesbianism, because you will be setting her up for failure. And she knows that better than anyone, because every time she's admitted anything about her personal life, people will use it as a reason to swarm her. She had a verse on Charli XCX's song Guess last year, and people were so quick to jump to calling her predatory because she said, and I quote, "Charli likes boys but she knows that hit it." As if it wasn't literally Charli's song and she couldn't have vetoed that line if it made her uncomfortable. Do you know how many men sing much worse things about women? Are we jumping to call all those men predators? Didn't think so. And some of them actually are. Billie Eilish has been scrutinized to death, and she'll be publicly torn apart no matter what she does. To the point where in Vogue magazine this year, she said, "I wish no one knew anything about my sexuality or anything about my dating life. Ever, ever, ever. And I hope they never will again. And I'm never talking about my sexuality ever again. And I'm never talking about who I'm dating ever again." As Twitter user What I'm Crying For pointed out in response to this, Twitter users are so fucking stupid. When she showed her interest in women, she was called a queerbaiter. When she came out, y'all invalidated her feelings because she didn't have much experience with women. And when she sings about her attraction for women, you'll call her predatory. You put these people in a no-win scenario and then get mad when they get upset and point out that they can't win. This goes double and triple for BL and K-pop stars. You can complain about the fact that they get boxed into certain categories or obliged to do fan service all you want, but for as long as you continue to buy into the fan service, they will continue to be exploited, whether they signed up for it or not. And I'm not saying you can't enjoy K-dramas or K-pop or Thai BLs or JBLs. That would be very hypocritical of me as a famed enjoyer of all of those things. But I am saying that you have to be the change you wish to see in the world. I don't think you ever thought that quote would be used for something like this. It's fun to watch Jung and Dunk flirt with each other in interviews, but I am under no delusions that they are secretly dating. And even if they were, it wouldn't be any of our fucking business. But their contracts demand a certain level of fan service, and sometimes that means performing songs at fan meets, and sometimes it means pretending to be jealous or possessive of each other, or implying they're secretly together, and that will never not leave a bad taste in my mouth. Actually, as Jung himself said recently,
คุยกับอะไรแบบนั้นด้วยอะไรแบบนี้ผมคิดแบบนี้ใช่ครับ
บางครั้งก็มีคำถามในหัวครับอันนี้ออนไม่ได้ครับเป็นที่อะไรอ่ะ
ออนไปแล้ว
อันนี้ไลฟ์ออนไปแล้วไลฟ์อยู่อันนี้ไลฟ์ปะออนไปแล้วจูไม่รู้ตัวเลยเหรอ
เราไลฟ์สด
จริงเหรอ
as goes for every celebrity mentioned thus far, it doesn't matter if they knew that they'd be forced to kiss their homies on stage while promoting their shows or not, it's still shitty. And in some cases, it's worse because they're cast when they're teenagers and have a lot less awareness of the industry before they get thrust into the public eye. Korean stars famously aren't allowed to publicly date other people because it might upset their fan base. And Thai BL stars suffer the same expectations. And it's awful, but it's easy to hand wave away because that's just the culture, or even the tried and tested, that's the price of fame, which apparently works no matter what country you get famous in. And on the rare occasion that they confirm they aren't queer, or that they're dating somebody other than their co-star, all hell breaks loose. And it only confirms to their management companies that forcing them to continue the ruse is a better choice. And then the cycle repeats, the snake eats its own tail, and the danger posed to the boys at the heart of the circus only worsens. We've put them on a tightrope without a net underneath. And then, like a crowd gathering to watch a public hanging in medieval times, we wait for them to fall. Some Thai dramas have gone as far as to normalize this behavior, like Fish Upon the Sky or Only Boo. There's a currently airing Thai BL called Tempo that is attempting to scrutinize problems caused by their own industry, and it's actually doing a phenomenal job, but I can't praise it completely yet because it's not finished, so I don't know if it stuck the landing. Since filming this segment, the show has actually finished, and I'm not going to say it didn't make its point successfully, because it did, and I'm not going to say that it wasn't an unrealistic ending, because it kind of was. It's still a TV show, but they sort of solved the problem of their management stopping them from being able to date freely by just leaving their management and sort of going off on their own, and I think that is the case. Like, some K-pop groups have broken free of their management because their manager have made some shitty decisions, like GOT7 is a perfect example of that, but like, leaving their management going off on their own does not solve the problem created by this like toxic fan environment, and I don't know, it's much better than any of the previous other Thai dramas I've seen that have tried to tackle this subject matter, but I'm not inclined to say that it's a perfect handling of it. And I'm not convinced that there is a perfect way to handle it, except to point the finger directly at the audience and go, this is your fault. The reason why these characters are unhappy is because you put this pressure on them not to reveal anything about their personal lives, which they kind of do, but I think it could have been executed better. But at the end of the day, it is still like a sweet, fluffy rom-com show, and they want to wrap things up in a nice, neat bow, and that's fine, and I respect that. So it's one thing to hold a mirror up to the industry and point out how damaging it can be, but if it ends with hand-waving it all away with the industry didn't need to change, our characters just found a way around it, then it would be pointless. And even in the K-dramas that are making some attempts at showing the negative effects this culture has on the people involved, there's always some level of, but they knew this when they signed up, so they're sort of begrudgingly coping. Shooting Stars, So I Married an Anti-Fan, and Duna all take swings at the culture, but none of them really land a hit because they're all too scared of the masses to commit. And fair enough, I've witnessed enough of Stan Twitter to be afraid too. But that fear is only contributing to the problem, because for as long as we pretend that this is normal, it will continue to happen. Fandomifying somebody's relationships, deciding they're dating their co-star or their friend, and then not only publicly speculating about it, but being angry if you find out that's not the case, is fucking weird. It's cringe and embarrassing, and you should be embarrassed.
Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
Even if they are together, that doesn't validate your behavior. And actually, on that,
pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Billie Eilish has announced her intention to never speak about her relationships or sexuality publicly ever again. Most Korean and Thai stars are either contractually obligated to keep their personal life secret, or they do it for their own safety. Some K-pop stars get married and have children before the world ever finds out who they were dating. Don't worry, the fans will get mad at that too, obviously. And I can think of at least 2 examples in recent history of celebrities who've kept their relationship under wraps specifically because the fan pressure on their relationship was too much to handle. The first is Eliza Taylor and Bob Morley from the CW show The 100. They played the 2 lead characters, Clark and Bellamy, and a lot of people shipped their characters together, myself included. I wrote over 1 million words of fanfic on Archive of Our Own just about Bellark, and I have no regrets. I mean, I regret watching season 7 because that shit was so ass. Like, it could rival Game of Thrones for worst final season, but I digress. But I was never one of those weirdos who publicly shipped Eliza and Bob together. Largely because that's a really, really weird thing to do. For starters, they were both in relationships with other people for the majority of their run on the show. But also, there is some level of detachment from reality when you're analysing every single moment 2 people spend together to prove they're secretly together, especially when those moments all happened in public forum where they are hyper-aware they're being perceived. And like, I loved watching them interact. I rewatched their Comic-Con panels over and over. I tuned into their interviews or the behind-the-scenes footage where they teased each other or took care of each other.
That's a lot of missed calls, bro.
That is a lot of missed calls. But now that WB is owned by AT&T, you can get that for real cheap.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there, like, that relates to Lexa. Stop looking at me.
I even watched compilation videos of their moments together. But I did all of that with the knowledge that I do not know them. I was happy when they announced their marriage because they seemed happy to be married. And because I had been a fan of them individually and as performers together for a few years, and it was positive news. But my happiness at these 2 abject strangers' happiness doesn't define my life. If they divorced tomorrow, I'd be sad, but it wouldn't shake my worldview. Privately speculating is fine, by the way. I have my own personal opinions about which K-pop stars are dating each other or which Thai BL stars secretly hate each other, but like, I'm never ever going to state them publicly. It's not only not my business, but it's super invasive and weird. And if somebody did it to me and my friends, I'd be severely uncomfortable. If you're privately speculating that me and I don't know, Willie Muse are having a torrid affair, that's fine. Go off, seriously. But if you start to post about it, to tag us in it, to pick fights with other people who say that actually Tellus is dating Aronok and creating a ship war out of real, actual people's lives, that's when you become the problem. And I picked Willie and Aronok because we're extremely platonic, by the way, so don't get any ideas. Aronok is also in a happy relationship, so fuck off. But when Bob and Eliza announced that they had eloped and were married, which they only did because some journalists, and those are extremely heavy air quotes, acquired their wedding photos and threatened to publish them, a lot of fans learned the wrong lesson from that. Instead of going, wow, these people that I claimed to care about were so uncomfortable with the fan behavior surrounding their relationship that they kept it a secret for at least a year and presumably weren't planning on telling anyone until they were blackmailed into announcing it. Maybe I should stop projecting onto them. Some of these people went, oh my god, I was right, they were secretly dating. This validates everything I did. I will learn nothing from this. And unfortunately, those people are more common than we'd like to think they are. A much more recent example is the Shortney April Fool's wedding announcement. Aside from being objectively the funniest way to do that, they also discussed that a big part of the reason they had kept it so under wraps until after they were married was specifically because of obsessive fans. And again, some people took the wrong lesson from that. Instead of introspecting about why their behavior had made the people they claimed to care about uncomfortable, they just went, I was right! And continued behaving that way. Only now feeling validated for their delusional behavior. Who cares if shipping Shane and Courtney together and constantly speculating about their private lives only pushed them further away from the public eye because of how frightening or frustrating it was? Who cares if, for the majority of the time you were doing it, they actually weren't together, because in the end, you were right? Who cares if they actually might have gotten together sooner if you hadn't made the whole environment around them so weird? They're married, so you win. And now you can start combing through all their appearances together, or their on-screen dynamics with other people, and inventing new things to spread. Like that Amanda is predatory and her friendship with Shane isn't normal, or that Courtney resents her, or just pivoting to new members of the cast to ship together and harass about it.
Does it feel a little uncomfy? I feel like it means that they're invested and they're having fun and they're curious.
It only bugged me a bit back in the day when people would like go farther than that. It was like,
are these people dating? Is that a thing? And it'd be like, who cares? And then it's like, let's start comparing the backgrounds of their photos at different times. And when you stumble upon something like that, you're like, oh,
interesting.
Oh, that's intense.
Okay. And then they're like, I know this person went to visit their family at this time, but then this person also did this. So it's possible. I'm like, okay, that's beyond shipping. Like, it's such a small percentage of the audience that would do stuff like that, but like any amount is enough. So don't love that. It bums me out when people do opposite shipping, where like for a while people were like, Damien and Angela like hate each other. And I was like,
like rivals?
Not even rivals, just like, wow, Damien clearly was like not having it with Angela today. I'm like, in what possible way? I'm not the best at social cues, but even that, I'm just like...
These people don't think about Bob or Eliza or Courtney or Shane or Amanda as real people, because if they did, they'd think twice about everything they've done. They can justify the videos deconstructing their body language, or the Tumblr metas where they know exactly what restaurants they've been to in the last 48 hours, or the archives or real person fanfic, precisely because they don't know them. That's actually one of the ways that people who write RPF justify it to me when I ask, by the way. I'm not writing it about the actual person, I'm writing it about their public persona. As if that makes it less uncomfortable? Like, yeah, you're writing a fictionalized version of who they are, but at the end of the day, they are a real person. You're describing your version of the sex life of a real human person. You're speculating about their private life in public and then wondering why they didn't feel like they could come forward with their relationship sooner. It's, quite frankly, delusional behavior. I don't use the word delusional lightly, by the way. I'm not using it as an insult. I'm using it because it is the definition of that behavior. Categorized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. There's a not insignificant number of fairly funny tweets of stan accounts retiring from stanning because they went on meds or realized they were down a dangerous rabbit hole. One of them was that someone had CO2 poisoning. And it's easy to laugh at that because the idea that somebody is only an intense Dua Lipa stan because they have carbon monoxide poisoning is a little funny. But the fact that it's not actually that isolated of an incident is surely an indicator that this behavior is not healthy. And you can dress it up in, I know the real people are separate from their personas, I just like having fun, all you like. But even if that is true, to the rest of the world, you're just an obsessive with a delusion. And doesn't that make you think twice, even a little bit? The only exception I will ever make about real person fanfic or speculation is if it is funny. If you write a fanfic about me and another YouTuber and it's funny and you're clearly not taking it seriously, that's okay. That's comedy. If you tweet about how Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are secretly in love and you're not actually that serious, that's okay. If you make a TikTok about how Taylor Swift is clearly gay using a fake song where she's actually really homophobic, that's hilarious. Keep up the good work.
And she's coming out.
As a lesbian?
Yes, as a lesbian.
Okay.
She's always been.
Okay. All right.
It's called Rainbow Dress.
Hot summer June, sleepless afternoon.
June.
Wearing my rainbow dress.
Is this Taylor?
So
She sounds bad.
listen.
Like the vocals sound bad.
Jonathan Van Ness.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
I wanna have straight sex at the gay
Was it straight sex? That's not so gay. It doesn't sound that gay.
She's at the gay pride parade.
It's very confusing, this song. Yeah.
I wish there was straight pride at the gay pride.
If, however, you sincerely believe in what you're writing, despite not knowing any of those people, please seek professional help. It worries me that real person fanfic, RPF, is the biggest category of fanfic on AO3, and that the number only grows year on year. It worries me that there are ship wars within the BTS fandom, because some people know for sure that Jungkook is secretly dating Jimin, and others know for sure that he's actually dating Taehyung, and these opinions are so strongly held that it creates genuine hatred between those factions of fandom. Which is silly, because we all know Jungkook is actually dating Jack Harlow.
I'm on my Jungkook.
I'm joking, obviously, but there are some people out there who actually believe that, I'm sure. And like, let's not forget that in Korea, being gay is not something that you can do with any level of safety. So it's very easy for us to speculate about band members dating each other. But if any of those idols are actually gay, do you not think that takes some of the fun out of it? If Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are secretly in love with each other, that's not funny. That's heartbreaking. Creating a fictional version of somebody you like has become part and parcel of existence, and we all participate in that culture to a certain extent. But there have to be boundaries. I don't know if me and Chappell Roan would actually like each other if we met. She might hate me on sight. I have a ridiculous idea that me and Jung Archin would get on like a house on fire, but I have zero proof of that except that we have the same sense of humor. In practice, we speak different languages and live in different countries, and he's an extrovert and I'm this. So I never have to actually confront the truth in that idea. But I'm aware of that. The real scary thing is when you get so lost in the sauce that you start to drink your own Kool-Aid. I can think of a dozen examples of fans going too far and overstepping the boundaries of the person they claim to love in the last year just off the top of my head. Fans of Timothy Chalamet, Chris Evans, Hozier, more K-pop stars than you could shake a stick at. Same goes for Ty BL stars, Sabrina Carpenter, Zack Snyder, half the Smosh cast, and even fucking Aubrey Plaza, right after her husband died, have managed to do more harm than good in their quest to win at being a fan of somebody. Just because you post about them more than anybody else doesn't mean you're their biggest fan, nor does it mean that you're then entitled to their attention, or anyone else's. And if that sucks to hear, I'm sorry I had to be the one to break it to you. But you do need to hear it. You need to hear it more if you're already trying to reject it and come up with some verbose comment about why I'm wrong. And actually your 50,000 word fanfic about First and Cow is totally valid because they've played a couple on shows together and they do fan service at events. I mean, still leave the comment, I love engagement, but once you have, maybe consider coming back to it in a year's time and see if you still feel the same way. I'm not saying that being a super fan of something is always a bad thing, because it isn't. I'm mentally ill and neurodivergent, so I understand that sometimes you don't get to decide what your brain latches onto. There has been more than one time in my life where my hyperfixation has been on real people, or at least their public personas, so I'm not saying you're inherently bad for feeling that way about celebrities. Watch those compilation videos, or reblog gift sets, or reread interviews all you like. You're not hurting anyone by enjoying the versions of themselves that they've put out there to be consumed. Make the gift sets, make the compilation videos. What I am saying is that there is a fine line between indulging a hyperfixation and creating or informing a delusion. It's easy to fall down the rabbit hole, especially when you're surrounded by people who are even further down the rabbit hole than you are, encouraging you to dive even deeper, or when you found validation in that community, or an escape from your own life. I understand that and I empathize. I really do. Did I mention the million words of fanfic I wrote about one show? But when you fandomify real people to the point where you forget how to be a normal human being, you lose the privilege of hiding behind neurodivergence or a desire for social acceptance. When I watch videos about the K-pop boys I like or the Thai BL stars I enjoy seeing together, I do it with full knowledge of my detachment from them and their internal lives. I'll watch a Taekook video and then turn right around and watch a Cookmin video, not because I ship either pairing, but because I genuinely like that there are compilations of their relationships that exist just to highlight nice moments. If I click on a video like that and instead of a silly montage of run BTS clips, it's an earnest breakdown of their body language or the secret fights you think they've had, I immediately click off because that's too much. I'll watch every iteration of the Everyone Being Done with Jungdung series because it's predicated on their public appearances. And when I watch them, I just think about my own friendships and how if there was a camera on us constantly, people would think we were too much too. But I don't ever take those videos as proof of something that I have no business stating as fact. That voice you hear in your head when you get too invested in somebody to the point of sesang behavior that tells you it's okay and that you're not doing anything wrong is lying to you. Just because some people are trying to normalize their behavior doesn't mean you should join in. Those people are being unempathetic, rude, and frankly, they don't deserve your time or energy any more than they deserve mine. As I know I've said this in a couple of other videos before, but I need to make it like a permanent part of my channel. Do not make me tap the sign. That is a person. You are communicating with a human person. Even if you think you're not one of the bad ones, if you're part and parcel of their community and you don't understand why people would lump you in with them, you are part of the problem. As Twitter user Villainous Friend pointed out in their thread on the topic, thinking about people saying, this is a public space, anyone can comment, you should expect to get nasty messages from people like me. If I camp in the rainforest, I must remember to leave my boots upside down overnight, or bugs and spiders will crawl in there. If I forget and find a scorpion in my boot, yeah, that's on me. Scorpions don't know any better. Why would they avoid a nice dark space just because it's my boot? But you're a human being. You know about nuance, community, social etiquette, right? Why are you characterizing yourself as a bug that just crawls around shitting wherever it goes? or mildew that grows on laundry left outside overnight, or the mouse that ate my fudge in that Airbnb one time. It's easy to lie or double down because that's easier than acknowledging that your actions might actually be harmful. But what kind of person does that make you? The world makes it very easy to ignore our humanity and buy into fantasies, and we all hear the same siren call, beckoning us towards the rocks that promise to destroy not just us, but anybody else who boarded the ship with us. The song is so fun though. Who cares if the person you think is singing it to you actually is tied to the mast of the ship and begging you to turn the boat around? You're not hurting anybody by indulging in a little bit of fantasy, are you? Those rocks sure do look inviting. We're all in the same boat, and we've all heard the same song, but most of us are able to avoid the rocks and come out of the other side with our sense of self mostly intact. The sirens will keep trying to call us away from our humanity and genuine connection, because that's their business model, and it's worked perfectly well so far. The best we can do is not give in to temptation.
I lived, bitch. So, in case some of you weren't aware, as I was editing this video or trying to work on this video, I was also escaping a cyclone. The friend's place who I'd been staying at was right in the sort of path of the cyclone, which was a bit scary. So I ended up having to leave and head north and west to get out of it. And even where I'm staying currently with a different friend, the weather has been very, very bad. Wind has torn off people's roofs, people's back gardens have been disarray, there have been power cuts. We had a massive power outage that cut off like a quarter of the city. But I and the people closest to me are all fine, which I am very, very, very grateful for. I'm very, very lucky, so thank God for that. Yeah, that was all like while I was trying to get this video out, which was a little bit frustrating. So like one of the things I didn't get to touch on in the video, which I meant to, was Kieran Culkin's Oscar speech, because it wasn't that important, and I think the other topics I covered made better points, but like the sudden flip on Kieran once he gave his Oscar speech about having more kids with his wife, which was very clearly like an in-joke and a reference within his relationship that she was fine with. Like she was laughing and playing along with it, and he was very clearly joking and like taking the piss and like riding the high of like one of the best moments of his life. People immediately got online and turned on him and was like, it's so misogynistic that he said that. It's like, girl, if you want to know what actual misogyny looks like, go and watch my 4-hour video on it, because that ain't it. That ain't it, chief. It's just frustrating. It's just a constant willingness to disregard the obvious in favor of just jumping on things. But yeah, this video has been a long time coming. I mean, videos in this series will probably never stop coming out because there's always some new intense way that people can fandomify real human people. And it's a topic that fascinates me because there does have to be some level of detachment from reality in order to like buy in to that level of stan or sassang or, you know. But yeah, thank you very much for being so patient with me. I hope you've all enjoyed the 4-hour epic that I previously put out. And if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. I put a lot of work into it. It took me like 6 months. I'm very proud of it. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my patrons, obviously, my wonderful, amazing patrons who put up with all these long breaks while I work on long videos. You don't actually see any output from me because all of it is going on behind the scenes. Extra special thank you to my Roman Empire patrons who are amazing and wonderful and fabulous, and I love them, Ian Musa and Candy99. An additional thank you to the iconic rooftop dwellers, Cast, Dana Brand, Nick Hook, BPs, Ace of Lights, Cal Kale, Best Stressed, Sunshine Shay, Deborah Laban, Sarah Parker Schimmelt, Ghost Porcupine, Callum McLeod of Clan McLeod, Whoop Whoops, Lilac Rose, CS, Rihanna, Carolina, Chris T, E. Teddy, Renelia Delgrange, Jellywa, Sunayama, Tiny Woodtree, and Tan. And another amazing thank you to my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful introverts. Look at all of them go. Look at how beautiful and gorgeous and amazing and iconic they are. I love all of these people so much. Some of them are people who I actually know in real life, which is wild. And some of them are people who I've never met before and probably never will, which is even more wild. It's one thing for your friends to support you. It's entirely another thing for a total stranger to quite literally buy into the things that you're creating. And I am so, 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 so lucky and honored and proud to have created something that makes people want to pay for it. It means so much to me. Genuinely cannot thank you all enough for sticking with me throughout all of this last messy year and hopefully in the years to come and bigger and better projects. It means a lot. Anyway, I'm off to go watch a compilation video of all my favorite K-pop boys saying funny shit. Annyeong.